Hello friends, little disclaimer before the video begins, I'm not in it. You will hear me, but you won't see me. I tried to do a screen sharing thing throughout the whole video so that people could follow along to what I'm talking about, and the screen sharing worked. But I was expecting it to be me, Charles, and the thing I was sharing on the screen. Nope, it's not going to be the most dynamic video. So if you really like my big reactions to things Charles is saying, I'm sorry, you'll have to wait until the next episode or rewatch the last episode. This one is going to be an audio enhanced podcast instead of a proper video. Sorry about that. Welcome to episode 52 of Upshift, no Direction Network podcast that gives you an edge on Essence 20. I'm Ryan Costello, one of the designers of the Essence 20 system, and an author on the G.I. Joe Transformers and My Little Pony role-playing guide core rulebooks, as well as a lot more.
And I'm Charles Cushman, and I'm on a journey to dig into the nitty-gritty details of the Essence 20 system and tap into Ryan's expert knowledge of how to get the most out of the game.
Charles, last week I missed the disclaimer. I was so excited to get to my prop comedy, and I'll get to the disclaimer in a minute, but I realized that I was more than just a couple of seconds early. I was a whole episode early because the joke I made for last episode perfectly fits this episode. We'll get to that in a second, but before we begin, although I have worked for Renegade on Essence 20, Upshift is not associated with or produced by Renegade Game Studios, and it is not an official Essence 20 podcast.
You're not going to do the line?
Which one?
And
all opinions shared herein are our own.
See, you have to nail it every time now. That's my, that gets me into the episode.
Yeah, no, sorry. 20 seconds in, and I've messed up 2 weeks in a row. 2 episodes in a row.
Do you want to do the his tank joke again, though?
I can't. It's in the other room.
Well, another opportunity missed. But on the other hand, this is kind of an interesting and exciting topic. You are going to get to build something after all.
Yes. And we get to make a joke, because what did you title this episode?
It's Shark Week.
There we go. Had I done last episode's joke this episode, we couldn't put 2 jokes in a row. We're not a comedy podcast.
It's true. And I'm not even that funny. So when it comes down to it, I'd used up my whole joke repertoire with the title.
Well, it all worked out in the end. And speaking of working out, we are going to try and work out a problem that has been bothering me since the release of the G.I. Joe core rulebook. A problem of my own making. I will explain why. But yeah, the shark is just built wrong. And that is a problem because it is an iconic G.I. Joe vehicle. And I want to finally fix it. So to demonstrate the vehicle design rules, we are going to design a vehicle that already exists. And so hopefully this doesn't cause any problems with Renegade. And I'm not releasing new material for their Essence 20 game. I am fixing material people have already paid for, and they can come here and get their fixed version of the shark without Renegade having to worry about, putting it up on their website. I will host this correction to a mistake that I made several years ago
now. So it pulled back the curtain. I believe it's been, it was long released. The Energon protocols that we did, that Eric GMs for us, our live play, it was one of the vehicles that we used and utilized.
You can't not use it in a G.I. Joe campaign.
It's too versatile, it's too interesting, and it's too tied to being able to do certain things that you can't. It's air, it's water, it's all the things. So when we were talking about it, you said that's the vehicle that you would love to redesign. And just to, pull the curtain back a bit, pulling apart statements like that, that's our writing process. Like when you say, oh, I want to do this, I'm like, oh, there's our content. So we're looking forward to being able to do it. But do you want to talk a bit about, you said you have to use the shark. What is the shark and why is it iconic to G.I. Joe?
All right. Well, SHARC, believe it or not, is an acronym. Let me get this right. For Submersible High Speed. The speed is not capitalized. Otherwise, it would be S.H.A.R.C. So it is high speed hyphenated small s. Submersible high-speed attack and reconnaissance craft. That "and" is also not capitalized. Sometimes it is. Sometimes they just rearrange the letters to make the acronym. This one doesn't have as many acronym sins as, say, the VAMP, which is the multi-attack vehicle. So anyway, yeah, the shark It is a submarine, but if you look at the box art, it's flying out of the water because it is a flying submarine. Now, if you're not familiar with the design of the shark and you're picturing submarine like just, the long tube, no, it looks like a jet. It is more of a submersible jet than it is a flying submarine as far as the design goes. And it's a simple design. It's boxy, it's angular, and yet it's instantly recognizable and is has long been one of GI Joe's most popular vehicles. Part of the reason for that is that it was often used on the GI Joe animated series. For the same reason that it would often show up in a GI Joe adventure, is that as an air and a sea vehicle, it checks two boxes and it looks good doing it. So it got a lot of use on the Sunbow series, even though they changed the design. Because on Sunbow series, it's got a cockpit with two chairs. The actual toy, you just lie a figure flat down. But other than that, iconic, popular, heavily used in the animated series. And the toy, again, simple design, has a lot going for it. It has pegs for the torpedoes, and you can instead put Joe's on there. Oh, what did I call that? Rocket riders in the rocket rider position. So you can have Joe's in, supposedly in aquatic gear. They wouldn't actually have room for an air tank, but you could plug them into the bottom of it. So when it goes underwater, they could then release and swim around. It does so much with so little.
I'm going to throw out there because I do really like the does this exist in real life? And I find that no matter how ridiculous, like the more ridiculous a G.I. Joe thing is without going into the weird, it might be real. And flying submarine is real.
No way.
There's a something called the Deep Flight Super Falcon, which is a flying submarine. Doesn't exactly look like the Shark, but it is a real underwater submersible that flies.
Do you know like what its flying capacity is?
No.
Okay.
Yep. I could watch the YouTube video, and I can create a link and put that into the comments and let people go in and look for themselves. But it is, yeah, it's a real thing, and there's been a lot of military development into researching this sort of thing. So it's not that wild an idea.
I wish, because I've got all of the Creating G.I. Joe book series here, and it covers the figures and vehicles from the 82 to 94 line, which means the Shark's in there. I should have done a little research for this episode to see if maybe that was even one of the inspirations for the vehicle, or was it just one of those things, what would be cool? Flying boat, flying submarine.
And it is.
I also have here in our notes that it solves the Aquaman problem with the Namor solution. So the Aquaman problem is when you have a character that is super specialized for something that does not come up that often. And so Aquaman being a sea creature, a sea character, reflects that when you sell a kid a submarine toy, they can't take it to the park. They can't just walk around the living room playing with it unless they're, I guess they could pretend the whole living room is underwater. But it feels like a toy that is locked to a single environment. And by making it fly, much like Namor, who one of his only powers that Aquaman doesn't have is that he has little wings on his ankles and he can fly. They can come out of the water and you can take this toy anywhere.
And that really, as a kid, that was one of the toys that I was able to take everywhere. I'd lost the torpedoes, almost instantly after I'd purchased it, but it was one of those toys that I could take with me because it had so few little extraneous parts. I wasn't likely to lose them, and you could jam two figures in there, which is enough, minimum enough to be able to play. So it portable, usable, small, few pieces, very simple. Great toy.
I just one of my fondest memories is a heartbreaking memory for the shark because I was playing with it in a lake. No, not even a lake. In like anyway, a big body of water that I had Maverick, the Battle Force 2000 pilot, plugged into the bottom, went into the sea with him, came out without Maverick, and he is just lost, swept away. And it was my brother's Maverick, and when I was explaining to my mom that I had lost him, I was like, but at least it was my brother's. And so I also learned a lesson on no, that is the wrong attitude. You should feel worse because it was your brother's toy that you lost because it was your responsibility.
Wow. And now we know.
And knowing is half the battle. Nicely done, Charles.
Had two jokes in me this session.
You made a knowing is half the battle reference. What are the odds?
Ah, okay. So let's talk about the essence of the shark because you are redesigning it. One of the important things when you're redesigning these things is that you bring those elements which make it the shark into the game.
Yes. So we need to make sure that it is a small aircraft. So a lot of vehicles have different. We try and represent the size of the vehicle, the footprint it takes up, with the size in Essence 20. So we want to make sure this is one of the smaller ones. I'm willing to do the Sunbow version, which has the two seats, so you've got the two pilots in there. And we also I can throw on a couple of passengers in the torpedo spots. And while this is not necessary, I do like to say, like, but if you want passengers in the bottom, you lose the ability to have torpedoes. Like, that give and take feels like a significant choice the characters have to make. And that way, when you're deploying, if you have the option to take one shark for your four-man team or two sharks, it's a choice you make because two sharks has double the firepower and the same amount of space, but requires two pilots, which the team might not have. So you might have to sacrifice so that the one person who knows how to fly this thing is flying and everyone else is just holding on. However, you rock, paper, scissors to see who gets the chair. So that's important. It needs to be a sea and air vehicle and needs to make sure that we get all the weapons right. So I'm going to switch what I'm sharing for a second over to 3D Joe's. So 3D Joe's is a invaluable resource to collectors of the 82 to 94 version of G.I. Joe. And here we've got the shark queued up. There's the card art that I was talking about, or the box art. And the most important thing about this page for me as a designer, and I just shout out to 3D Joe's because hey, wait a second. Hold on. I gotta reshare. This screwed everything up because I just moved the window it was displaying on here.
The shark submerged.
Share.
I'm going to take this moment to talk about the most important thing on the shark, though.
Okay.
Pop-up guns.
All right. Tell me about the pop-up guns.
Everything in the late 80s, early 90s was about pop-ups, pop-up headlights, things that, your VCR had a thing that popped up. It's hugely important to have pop-up things. And it was the one feature that I absolutely loved about the Shark was that you could pop the guns up. So it would be absolutely essential, I would think, to ensure that there's some aspect of pop-up guns in what it is that you're building.
And I will say, like, when G.I. Joe vehicles switched from having pop-up stuff to spring-loaded as the main thing, we just lost a lot. The pop-ups required greater engineering to work it into the vehicle, and therefore more work and more effort on the designer side, which resulted in better vehicles. Which is why something like the Shark is iconic, and yet the Rat is ridiculed.
Well, the Rat is ridiculed for numerous reasons. It is, I think, generally agreed to be the worst vehicle in the entire line.
No, I like the Rat. I
The
hate. I think it's the detonator where it's just like this long frame with a missile on one giant missile on it. Like that's a nothing vehicle to me. But anyway, talking about 3D Joes, one of the reasons that it is such an invaluable resource to me as a designer is the blueprints. They have scans of the blueprints of every vehicle, and the blueprints give so much information. It's not like a file card, which is like narrative. No, it is just bullet points pointing at a bunch of details. And because they tended to put at least a dozen things on there, they had to point to just something that was sculpted onto the mold that may have had no significance and give it significance with this really cool, like, faux technical language that works really well for when I'm looking for the name of an ability or an option for the vehicle. So whenever I'm designing a vehicle, I pull up its blueprint if it was from the era that they were releasing blueprints with it, which was most of the original run, but it's just the newer vehicles or the 2000s vehicles didn't have this. And so they are less fun to design.
does have the G.I. Joe Babble, the very, very cool set of word salad of technical terms that were popular at the time. And so you can actually look at any vehicle and go, this was turbo is great. Vulcan was great. Like there's just some real interesting words there that screamed out that era of how people talked about technical things. It's a very interesting piece of the G.I. Joe sort of history or putting it into the context of the time.
Yeah, so looking at number 14, that's a great example. It's the Shark Series 1. Series 1's intriguing. Are they working on a Series 2? The acoustic homing ASW torpedo. What does ASW stand for? We'll never know. It's up to us to figure it out. But acoustic homing, so it's not a heat seeking, it's a sound seeking torpedo. And
ASW means anti-submarine warfare.
oh, does it actually?
Yes.
I wasn't sure if they
So
were just throwing some letters on there to make it sound more technical.
it is it's a catchphrase from the term, but essentially what that torpedo does is it follows the sound of a submarine to wherever it is and blows it up.
Which is why when you're on a submarine and you think there's an enemy nearby, everyone has to shut up.
It's because there might be a
Classic.
shark somewhere around there ready to blow them up. Also
Hmm.
other things, but mostly sharks.
So this, like I said, this is great for when I need language for the write up. When I need an extra ability, I can just look it over and say like, what haven't I covered? And also when we're naming the stat blocks, because if you look at the stat blocks for any given vehicle, like the twin 30 millimeter tidal wave cannons, that's way more detailed than anything that any of the Joes are carrying. But that's because I have canonical names for the weapons on this vehicle. So this pop-up weapon is, the name carries over. And likewise, when we're describing the defenses, instead of just using +2 to toughness, +2 plating to toughness, I can say because of its ceramic laminate. Oh no, those are exhaust nozzles. Anyway, I'm sure there's somewhere. There we go. The boron epoxy skin over titanium frame. I can use that as the description for where its bonuses come from. It's just flavor, but it's fun to incorporate that flavor from the toy, into the design of the vehicle.
So redesigning the shark. My first question is, you had a very dramatic response to talking about the shark. It felt like you regretted choices that you had made. And so I wanted to ask, what don't you like about the current Essence 20 shark design?
So it's actually not choices I made. It is I just didn't follow our own design rules, and so its
Oh,
stats all over the place. It is way more powerful than it should be. So the skills are too high, which means that the defenses are too high. It has an evasion of 28. It's a threat level 7 vehicle. Like, it is almost impossible to hit. And I believe I also paired it with something that lets you. Oh no, okay. There are some vehicles that were also given the rule that you are forced to defend with an evasion. I don't believe we had anything that can force, or nothing common that could force a vehicle to defend with its toughness. But the toughness was still 19. That is its lesser defense. So I don't know what I did here. This is before I had put together a tool to streamline designing vehicles, but this wasn't like the first vehicle I designed. This is like, the 10th or whatever. I designed all the vehicles in one week or whatever. And everything else, I believe, lines up with the guide for designing it. So I don't know how I missed the mark so bad here. And I've gone back and checked. This is totally on me. The only real change between what I turned over and what got printed is that the movement is water, or yeah, it was changed to water. So I had written it as though there is an on the water movement and an in the water movement, basically vehicle swim speed. And that was all just generalized to aquatic. And I guess the editor, anyway, they put water in there. What they did wrong is far different, far less severe compared to what I did wrong with my 18 speed, 28 evasion. For no reason. There's no reason that these stats should be this high. So most of this is probably salvageable. I just need to redo that math.
okay. Yeah, I do see that 19 toughness on something which is mostly canopy glass might be a challenge, even if it is pressurized. And while we do have carbon ceramic exhaust points, or sorry, exhaust ports, it does seem a little fast for something which is a dual purpose vehicle. So I think I see where you're coming with on that.
And it shows up in the first published adventure, the Emerald Oubliette, which came with the GM screen. Like it's on the cover, and it's the featured vehicle for the vehicle scene, and you're just going to decimate the Mantis subs that you're put up against because these stats are just all wrong. And sure, it's fun to go on a power trip once in a while, but there is no reason. Like, it's just wrong. Threat level 7 has specific stats that it should have, and it does not have them.
All right. So what are your goals for a redesign?
Make the shark make sense and make it so that when people say we're going to use the shark in the adventure, I don't have to say, like, rethink that.
All right. So you're building a new shark, putting the pieces together, much like the joke at the previous beginning of the previous episode. But describe how you're going to do this. What resources and approach are you going to use?
So we have two resources that we're going to use. One of them is, well, okay, sorry. There's two books we're going to reference. One of them is the G.I. Joe core rulebook on page 182, 183. That's where the original shark shows up. We're mostly going to compare and contrast, and anytime that there is something that can port over, we will grab it. But more importantly, we're going to be using the Field Guide to Action Adventure, which has the threat creation rules and has a second section for vehicle threats, even though there's very little. In fact, none of the steps are much different. It just clarifies how you deal with your essence scores and ranks when your vehicle most likely doesn't have a smarts and almost definitely does not have a social essence score. So oh no, and it talks about how you figure out the crew fire points, hard points. So anything that is vehicle specific is covered in this instead of doing just one thing of threat design rules and then throwing in. And if it's a vehicle, no, we've separated them. So if you know the threat design rules, this one just kind of refreshes most of them and throws in a couple of things that are specific to vehicles.
I understand sort of instinctively what threat level and balance mean, but what do they mean in Essence 20?
I believe it's defined somewhere. So it's basically the equation you use to figure out if a party of four is an appropriate, or if the threat is appropriate for a party of four. So threat level 1 and 4 first level characters should be no problem. And then you do some calculations to figure out who's an appropriate lieutenant level boss, who's an appropriate final boss. And vehicles, if it's on your side, add to your party's threat level. So when you're doing the calculation, you have to factor them in and then divide it up. And we had talked about it last week. Yeah, I don't have the equation directly in front of me, but it's basically add everything together, divide by the number of people in the group, and that's more or less, that'll get you the threat level that you're looking at.
Okay. So you say it's level 7. Give me a couple of an example or even a couple of examples of what other vehicles are a level 7 threat.
Um, uh, I don't know that off the top of my head, so I'll just go through some vehicles and show you their threat level, and then you can kind of figure out this
Okay.
is choosing the threat level is just kind of instinct of what you like, what level you should gain access to this, and
Mhm.
also it's mostly just vibes. So the APC is threat level 2, and oh no, sorry, the other thing is that the higher the threat level, the more options we get to add to it. And so if something
Mhm.
is very straightforward, like the APC, its big thing, it has one cool cannon and it has a massive storage for, or a massive crew capacity for passengers. And that's all we needed to make the APC possible. And a lot of adventures will just need a personnel carrier. So we wanted to make that low. That's why it's threat level 2. Moving on to the All Striker, this is more combat capable. So it's threat level 5. And we get to add some things about like the four-wheel suspension and make sure that it's hardy and can traverse a lot of terrain. The Dragonfly is threat level 8 because it's really getting into one of the attack crafts. And we don't have too many double digit vehicles. We did try and make them a cap out at about 10 to make sure that you can then add them to a party and not totally throw off the numbers. So Dragonfly as an 8 is one of the more powerful things, and it's because it's loaded with weapons and it's flying. It has a lot of things going for it.
At level 7, then this is a pretty significant threat. It's fits into kind of that category of you wouldn't face it until you were fairly high level.
Unless both sides had vehicles, because then
Ah,
you're raising the threat level on both sides, which is why it shows up in Emerald Oubliette, even though that is a first or second level adventure. I don't remember. But it's for a vehicle encounter. It's for travel narratively, and then when there's an encounter, it's you against several, I think two Mantis subs. And I didn't design the Mantis subs. I don't remember off the top of my head what their threat level is. It's probably comparable. It's probably a 6 just because being an iconic vehicle kind of gives you the rub. It gives you a little bit of bump in your prestige, and threat level kind of represents a little bit of prestige of the vehicle.
All right. I'm going to sit back and watch you do the magic. Redesign the shark.
All right. Well, one other resource that I am going to use, we were talking about that I did not have the Essence 20 build sheet yet, the tool sheet. So this is something that gradually I tinkered with over time, and then finally I asked Justin Franklin, who does the Essence 20 module for Foundry. I was like, you probably know, you are probably a high enough level Excel user that you know the tricks that I know exist but don't exactly know how to do. And he and I worked together on this so that if you look at it on the screen, you've got your strength, speed, smarts, and social. And then down here, we break down all of the different skills for each one. So then if I put, say, a rank in athletics, which I will not be doing for the shark, but just as an example, I put the rank in athletics, it automatically calculates that I've now got one strength, tells me my total over here. I keep the 16 in mind over here because I use this for essential builds and first level characters get 16 essence points. And then over here, we've got the alphabetical skills, and it's translated that one into a plus D2. And then when I'm done, I will just highlight this whole section like this, copy it, paste it into Notebook, and then just chop down to the ones that I need for the stat blocks that we're representing. So it is not the prettiest, but it gets the job done. Oh, and of course, we've got this do not touch section over here. Do not touch that. It is red for a reason. I could have made it white, but then someone might have accidentally deleted it. So, yeah, it is red for a reason.
No step.
Nice. So we also have a couple of charts that are helpful here, including the number of essence points you can expect by threat level. So this is based on the calculation as it's presented in the Field Guide to Action Adventure, which is a revision of what we had originally done for the first couple of core rulebooks, which turned out to be super problematic, which is why Cobra Commander has like 1 million stats. So we pulled things back. It mainly only affects threats over threat level 10, and really it's the 15 to 20 is where things started to get out of control. So yeah, the math is based on what we now currently use and have used since basically since the field guide. Even before the field guide came out, we had reworked the math for the threat level and essence score conversion. And we've been using it ever since. This is the one that freelancers use to figure out threats in officially published books. So threat level 0, you have a total of 6 points. I then break it down. So the average is 1.5. So if you're trying to do somebody that is good at one essence score over the other, make sure it's above the average. Just be aware, of course, you're going to end up with a below average thing. If you're creating an animal, you get 75% of what you're supposed to get because animals do not have social scores. Not that you can't argue that animals should have social skills, but that the social skills are weird for animals. Like animal handling, okay. Deception, performance, persuasion, streetwise, like intimidate does most of what we need an animal to do. And so we can move it there. And if it's just like, I have a very social animal, you can either choose to stat it up just like a regular character and have a full social score, or you can do one of those abilities like it treats deception as a smart skill, and then you just put the ranks in there. It was just one of those things where if we gave them all a social score, then the best way to beat animals is to target their cleverness because they would always have this low rank here. So yeah, again, it's more of a game reason than a logic reason, but there were game reasons to do that. Vehicles, on the other hand, it's both a game and logic reason. It is, you get half of those essence score points because you only have to worry about a smarts and a speed. A strength and a speed. If you give your vehicle smarts, like if it has an AI, then just use this animal column. And if it's a sophisticated AI that also has a social skill, then just stat it up like a character. Keeping in mind that you could be creating vulnerabilities where your vehicle can get outsmarted or tricked. So just to go over how off the numbers are, here's 7. 7 says a vehicle should have a total of 10 points for its essence scores. It has strength of 8, and it does not have speed of 2. It has a speed of 18, giving it a total of 26, which is not even right for a full statted character. I don't know how I ended up with that number. Again, all me. Nobody else is to blame for that total screw up in the math there. I like a 26 vehicle makes it a threat level 23 vehicle. It's or a threat level 10 character. Yeah, it is off the charts wrong. I don't know. I just don't know what happened, but I've regretted it ever since.
You just really love the shark, and it's one of those things. It's got to be everything. It's awesome. Your 7-year old took over and went, "Oh, this is better than everything else. It's got to be a million of this," and it happened.
Listen, I love the shark, but I don't love it so much more than everything else that I was going to give it a bump. It's not like,
The
you
trouble
know,
bubble.
it, no, trouble bubble needs to be able to explode. It's part of the trouble bubble's appeal. No, I was thinking more like how Backstop somehow managed to make it into like the fourth book that came out. Even though, is he really? I made the argument that because we were presenting GI Joe as more of an international thing, having all of the international characters was important. But was it that important to get Backstop like as the active roster member in the core rulebook? Yes. Yes, it
Yes,
was.
very much,
I will be
absolutely.
taking no questions. All right.
Montreal represent. Okay.
So, looking at the stats, we know we don't have to worry about any of these two. And we know that we have, what was it, 10? We have 10 to fool around with. So, I'm just going to put a 10 here. There are ways that I could make it, this would be red if the total number is below, it would be green if it's the right, and it would be red again if the total number was too high. I just didn't do that. That's just an extra step that I could have used in this Google Sheet. So instead, I'll just use my eyeballs. Are these two numbers the same? If not, make them the same. So we're going to go over to speed because that is the more important one for the shark. Actually, or is it? No, let's just go down the list of the different skills under strength and speed, and we'll talk about how they relate to vehicles.
Mhm.
All right, so strength, athletics. Rarely will I give a vehicle athletics. Athletics would maybe be for something like a motorcycle where it feels like the person is using their physical strength to really like apply how they're moving the vehicle. But it rarely would come up otherwise. So yeah, athletics is a easy skip. Brawn is one that we gave ourselves an out. So it's logical that vehicles have a lot of brawn. Brawn is the just carrying capacity, basically. If you just need to hoist something up, I'm just naming a bunch of transformers at this point. But if you need to use your brawn to hoist and cliff jump, um, all right. So if you need to carry something, then you need high brawn. But the thing is that brawn, as it's written out, is that it is also based on the weight of the character or vehicle. And so even if we only have one brawn for a vehicle, that doesn't mean it can only carry the same as a person with one brawn. Because if the vehicle weighs so much more, the one brawn will go further than the person's. The one problem with that is that we don't actually have stats anywhere for how much these things weigh, but you can eyeball it. You can eyeball that, okay, well, I'm carrying this thing, it's very heavy. I'm going to throw it in the back of my pickup truck. If it even only has one brawn, it can still carry that. Whereas if it's like a heavy duty pickup truck meant to carry a vehicle in the back, like a 2x4, no, not a 2x4, a 4x4,
Four by four.
a 4x4, yeah, then you'll probably want that pickup truck to have a brawn 2 or 3. So brawn is good for a couple of reasons from the design perspective. One, it means that if we are short on skill points, we can just skip brawn. If
Mhm.
we are low on strength, we can pump them into brawn. Conditioning, I never give a vehicle conditioning. I just give it more hit points as one of its perks for because you get a certain number of perks when you're designing it. And so I find, especially when I'm designing vehicles, I'm really starved for skill points, and so conditioning never plays into it. It's just like, oh, this is supposed to be a big, a tougher, or whatever. I would give it extra hit points, and skip over conditioning. Intimidation is if the vehicle is covered in skulls, stuff like that, it might get intimidation. The shark has those shark mouth decals on it, kind of like the what Tiger Force later got. So uh, it's an argument could be made that it needs some intimidation, and might just like with other characters is good for melee. So if ramming it is ramming targets is a major part of your design, then giving it a couple of ranks in might is important. So looking these over, nothing screams shark. So I'm just going to do one in brawn, one in intimidation, and one in might for now. And that gives us 3 strength, gives us 7 to play with in speed, which is important. Moving over to the speed section. So acrobatics is something that I will occasionally give a very light vehicle, and especially flying vehicles, just so that if you are in a position where, oh, I want to do some fancy flying, you could call it a driving skill test, or you can say, or you do acrobatics. It's mostly just a flavor choice. If I just feel the flavor of the vehicle says this should be lithe and maneuverable, it gets acrobatics instead of driving. Driving is good if I want to give it an autopilot, which, let me just call up the old blueprints. Does it list an autopilot? If it lists an autopilot on one of its bullet points, then it automatically has to get ranks in driving by my own rules. So water atmosphere analyzers, no, we're good. Target acquisition pilot vision system, that's good to know that it should have a targeting system, which means we will get alertness despite not having smarts. Boron epoxy skin over titanium frame, that would be for the defenses. External electric engine control module, that's just good to know for when we get to the perks. Main engine heat dispenser, that's probably not going to come up. Engine compartment ventilator screen, probably not going to come up. Ceramic laminate exhaust nozzles, again, probably not. Twin 30mm tidal wave cannons, definitely going to come up when we do weapons. Impact resistant tinted gull wing canopy, might come up when we're going through some of the different features. Put a pin in that one. Emergency canopy release access hatch, again, might come up. Main vertical stabilizer / guidance rudders. No, that's once again for dry. Oh, wait, actually, sorry, that is what we're talking about here. So main vertical stabilizers / guidance rudders. So that is starting to feel like we could justify giving this autopilot, and therefore we'd throw a couple of ranks into driving in there. Tugs in main running light, no. Main water atmosphere feeders, no. And then the torpedo. So based on this point number 11, main vertical stabilizers / guidance rudders, I think the argument can be made that the S.H.A.R.C should have an autopilot, but it's not like it flat out says it's an autopilot. So we'll give it a 2 in driving. When we list its perks, we will give it autopilot as one of them. And that means that even though, actually, if we're doing the 2-seater, then that's especially good because it'll mean that this thing is made for 2 pilots. But if you only have 1 pilot, you're okay.
And I think the guidance rudders make a good argument, I would think, for acrobatics, like for the, sorry, I've forgotten. Yeah, acrobatics. So I think that it makes a good argument for acrobatics because it does have a specific big chunk of it devoted to changing directions really quickly. So there may be a value in that.
Okay, I will keep that in mind. Let's go through the rest of the list and see if we're going to go back for that. Finesse, so once again, it is for melee combat mainly. So in this case, ramming and flyby attacks, which we get both of as a flying aquatic vehicle. So, but you just make the choice. Is this more of a finesse attacker or is this more of a might attacker? I'm going to stick to might, even though it does feel like an agile vehicle, mostly because we didn't really do much with strength and we don't want our toughness to be that low. Infiltration, though, I feel is a major feature of the S.H.A.R.C because it is, the R in S.H.A.R.C stands for reconnaissance. So we're going to throw 2 in there, and keeping in mind we might go a little higher. Initiative, I'm okay skipping because you use either the vehicle or the pilot's initiative, and we'll assume that the pilot has some initiative. And then targeting. So we saw that there was a weapon system, which means that we should give it targeting so that if the driver does not have much in the way of targeting, then we give them the option to use the vehicles. But keep in mind, if we look up here, we've got 7 out of 10. So my instinct was to give it 2 or 3, but now I know I should stick to 2 because of the sensors we were talking about. Let me pull up. What was it? The target acquisition and pilot vision system. So this definitely needs some kind of alertness. So we are going to give it a rank in alertness. We are going to give it sensors. So the alertness will count somewhere. What do you think? Should we bump up the speed and say like, no, this is definitely a speed thing and say that the alertness counts towards our speed and therefore our evasion? Or do you want to shore up our lesser defense and say that the strength and therefore toughness should be up by 1, so toughness of 14?
I think speed really does seem more like it. It does have a big glass canopy. It is impact resistant, which is great. That's not the same as being bulletproof. So I think that there is a certain fragility to it that just comes out of the design. So I think that speed really does seem to be more its forte.
All right. Had you said strength, I would have said you were wrong. I didn't fully think of some of your arguments. They were good arguments, though. So, a rule of thumb for threat design is that the highest defense should be about 10 plus your threat level. So, we're threat level 7. We're going to make this 7. I can't do it in the automated thing, but when I carried it over, it would change to a 7. So we're right exactly where we want to be. It is the extreme of what is allowed, but that feels appropriate for the Shark because it is such clearly a speed-based vehicle. So looking over our stats now. Alertness D2, Brawn D2, Driving D4, Infiltration D4, Intimidation D2, Might D2, Targeting D4. So I like this because it's a lot of the same numbers over and over again. So because this is kind of auxiliary to your characters, I don't want you to have to reference the character sheet too often. Just know your stats are all D4s or D2s. One thing I'm not sure about, do we want to stick with this D2 intimidation and D2 might? Because we could go either way. We can bump it up to D4 intimidation and lean into the fact that it's got a shark face. Or we can drop it and say, like, that's just a vanity shark face, but give it D4 if we want to ram.
I don't think this is something that you want to ram. You are very, very close through a very impact resistant canopy. It just doesn't feel like ramming something with the shark is the tactic it would use. It splashes in the water, it runs, it hides. There's something about reconnaissance itself that doesn't lend itself to ramming into the target.
All right. Which means that we go back. I don't want to give it any more speed. So we go back to our strength skills. I was arguing we could give it more intimidation. Brawn is an option. I think Brawn 1 covers the ability to carry 2 people underneath it. Like, it's not a cargo vehicle, it's just carrying up to 4 crew. So we're going to go for intimidation. And now that gives me an excuse to give a perk like Shark Teeth and then say that when you are when somebody successfully spots the shark, you can immediately make an intimidation because the first thing they'll see, and especially if it's in murky water, is this giant fangy creature coming towards them or giant fangy mass.
I picture I don't something going on, a fight on a boat, and then a whole bunch of sharks just popping up out of the water and with the guns pointed at them. That would be a very intimidating moment.
Agreed. More intimidating than the mantis. All right. We're going to switch up, and I am going to share the shark stat block as it appears in the core rulebook, and we are just going to compare what we've got as far as the perks and powers, and to see if there's anything we need to add or lose. So yeah, just going down these skills, they were all D8s and D6s except for the targeting. Actually, let's compare to what ones we did end up with. So might, which is out of alphabetical order. I don't know what I did there. Might was a D8. Might is now gone. Brawn was a D8. Why was Brawn a D8? Come on, Ryan. Yeah, Brawn is now a D2. We did have acrobatics. We did not have room for acrobatics in the build, so we'll just have to lean on the fact that driving, which will have an autopilot. Oh, this one we had an autopilot specialization. That's infiltrate. That's interesting. So driving was a D6 with specialization. Now it's down to a D4. Infiltration had an underwater specialization, which I think, yeah, it makes sense that this is a lot easier to sneak in underwater. If I had another skill point, I would throw it in there. I don't want to change to any of my stats, so we'll stick with just infiltration with no specialization. It's a D4 right now. It used to be a D8 with specialization. Initiative used to be plus D8. God, why? Why did I do that? And targeting plus D4. All right, going to our crew. It says 2 drivers and 2 passengers, brackets rocket riders, and it's all capitalized, which is usually a good indication that you can look later on in the perks and find an explanation of what that is. And I'm
I
going to
love
say,
rocket riders, by the way.
Yeah,
Rocket Riders
I
is the
think I
perfect
came
name.
up with that. I forget which things I create and which things I pull from an official resource. I'm gonna take credit for that one. So crew, we're gonna keep exactly the same, and just comparing that to the field guide. A large vehicle, which is I believe the Shark is, it can have 1 to 4 crew. So we are right in the right zone there. 4 crew. Weapon systems. Actually, it's technically 2 crew and optionally 2 more crew, which we'll talk about in a second. Weapon systems, twin 30 millimeter tidal wave cannons. Now, cannon is one of those things that gives us some flexibility of how we are going to define it when we actually stat it out. We know that it needs to be something that works underwater, but otherwise, oh, and twin implies that it should have the linked trait, weapon trait. Otherwise, we have a lot of flexibility there. And then we've got acoustic torpedo ×2. Again, it's all capitalized, which again tells us this will probably be explained later. And then in brackets it says, or rocket riders. So that is telling us, and it will be explained more explicitly later, but it's telling us that we can have 2 passengers or we can have 2 torpedoes, but not both. Fire points. I was about to say this shouldn't have fire points, but no, the rocket riders can fire any weapons. That makes sense. They are magnetized to the bottom of the hull, and they are free to use their hands. Armor, light plating. Oh, I've let myself down here because we could have definitely said impact. No, that's the canopy. Where's the other one?
It's
The
the
boron. The boron epoxy
Moron.
skin. We could have just said that, and that gives us our plating bonus. It is amphibious. Yes, the amphibious uh, vehicle trait basically was invented for the Shark. So the Shark counts as both a land and a sea vehicle. So if Scaffold was driving this vehicle, he would get his specialization for it being, oh no, a land and a sea vehicle. This should be an air and a sea vehicle.
I was about to say,
Yeah. Oh, you know what? And I think that is what the amphibious trait does. We probably needed a better trait to say it's a sea vehicle as well as another, um, another territory type,
it's
terrain
a
type.
very unique design in that it is air and water. I don't know of maybe the Swamp Fire uh, is designed around those two elements, but it's not something that comes up very often.
Well, this isn't my biggest screw up on the Shark. So I would probably still just say amphibious and then just change it to air and sea vehicle and not tell anyone that we've got technically 2 definitions of amphibious. Or I guess if I had the word count, I would put in an extra couple of things that while amphibious usually means a land and sea vehicle, the Shark is air amphibious and is a air and sea vehicle. Autopilot, yeah. So we already justified that by looking at the blueprints. So this will have an autopilot and it will require 2 drivers, which is what the crew says. But if you only have the 1 driver, you can just rely on your autopilot. Hover I threw in there, although it does not have a ground movement. The Shark hovers 1 feet off the ground or the surface of water until it takes off or submerges. All right. I didn't have plans to put that into our new build. We'll leave it on there for now.
I would question it
Yeah,
because there's nothing on the toy that would suggest that it hovers.
yeah, yeah. All right, I'll give you your right. I'll give you your right. Anyway, I will
My
give you that one.
right.
Hover is dead. That's not in our final version of it. Rocket Riders. Yes, we are definitely keeping these. The underbelly of a Shark can be fitted with 2 acoustic torpedoes or 2 passengers in scuba gear, but not both or one of each. Is it clear that it's 2 or 2? Like when it says not both or one of each, I guess it could be taken both ways. No, no,
What that suggests to me is that it could have one torpedo and one person, and I'm not sure that
it's
that's
not supposed to say that. It's supposed to say not both or one of each, all as one single thought.
ah
So you have the 2 or the 2.
that might be reworded a little bit clearer because I would have from that I would have thought that I could have one torpedo and one scuba diver who would then get knocked off by the wash of the torpedo when it was launched.
So the thing is that if we were doing that, I would say 2 acoustic torpedoes or 2 passengers or one of each, but not both. But because it comes after the but not, it's paired with the you're not allowed both torpedoes and people.
I mean, you can just end it at two torpedoes or two divers.
Yes. Yeah, this is one of those times where trying to explain for extra clarity causes more confusion.
Fair enough.
All right, take off 60 feet. So it needs 60 feet in a straight line on the ground or underwater in order to use its aerial movement. That's probably what motivated me to include the hover, because otherwise it needs to start in the water to fly. And I definitely have seen it on the deck of the flag, although I think it might be dropped in the water. I don't know. This was probably just the easiest way to say how you get this thing into the air without, like, because it's also supposed to be a vehicle that you can just use almost whenever. So I'm going to say that that's what motivated the hover and the takeoff. And then we've got this giant, stupid vehicle description thing that's taken up so many words. Let's move on to our attacks. We've got our two 30 millimeter tidal wave cannons, which I have decided are machine guns. And so you get to use the vehicle's targeting, which is D4 here and is D4 in our new version. So there we go. We got that one right. Or you can use your driver's driving skill. And the range is cut off, so I would just make sure that the range showed up in the stat block. And then there's the alternate effects. Everything else here is the standard stuff for machine guns, but what makes it separate from the regular machine gun is it has the linked trait, which means we get an edge on attacks because we're attacking with two at the same time. It has the ammo feeder, which means we don't have to reload, and the amphibious upgrades. So as a threat level 7 vehicle, this has actually taken up a lot of our bonuses. So we'd have to go through and do the math to make sure that we haven't given it too much. But I would argue maybe ammo feeder we didn't need to. In fact, ammo feeder could have represented the pop up, pop down. So yeah, if we went through the math and said like we are using too many perks to build this vehicle, ammo feeder would go. Amphibious there's no compromise there. It needs amphibious weapons. And the acoustic torpedo, I took in a different direction than what it actually says on the toy. I said it does sonic damage, as in it is some kind of sonic weapon. Whereas it's actually the acoustic seeking torpedo is what it said on the blueprint. I actually kind of stand by that change for a couple of reasons. One, sonic rarely comes up, so it is nice to have some kind of canonical excuse that I can make it a sonic weapon. And two, it being like a seeking thing means we would just have to actually later the Transformers added something called accurate, which gives an upshift to your attacks. And this is a missile, it's consumable, so I probably, okay. That's how I would go if we were to redesign this. So might still do sonic damage just for the fun of it. But it's actually the acoustic seeking, and to represent that, one of its traits would be accurate and giving upshift 1 to the attacks. Because again, it's consumable. Missiles aren't like the rocket launcher. You actually do count your ammo. They're more like grenades. And then we've got our ram here, which since we actually removed might and never gave it finesse, instead of the plus D8 or driver's driving skill, it would just be driver's driving skill. Because even though you are skittish about the idea of ramming anyone with the shark, the option still needs to be there. So, just going back to our blueprints, I want to make sure we've got as much of them covered as we can. So, water atmosphere analyzers. Nope. I don't really know what to do with that. Like,
we were already looking at something, a perception skill.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, it has alertness. So that and the target acquisition pilot vision system. So those two both kind of wrap together and don't need their own perk explaining in greater detail. So we just know if people were to go back to the blueprints, we know that is all summed up in it having an alertness skill. The boron epoxy skin over titanium frame construction. In our new version, that will be the justification for why it has plating. The external electric engine control module. No.
That's autopilot.
That's the autopilot? External electric engine control. Yeah, you're right. That's the autopilot. Okay. Main engine heat dispenser. Nothing. Dissipator, actually. Dissipator is the word for the thing that we're not using. Engine compartment ventilator screen. We're also, it's a screen. I don't know.
See, it's funny because it's a screen door on a submarine.
Well, G.I. Joe found a way. The ceramic laminate exhaust nozzles. is not represented. I'm okay with that. The twin 30 millimeter tidal wave cannons is represented. It's our main weapon. Impact resistant tinted gull wing canopy. Um, Actually, yes, something, one of the traits it should have, in fact, it doesn't even have a trait section. One of the traits it should have is the, what do you call it? Let me, armored cabin. I think this justifies it having an armored cabin, which means you cannot attack the crew.
Yeah, that absolutely works.
Okay, so that'll be one of our traits. Energy canopy release access hatch. No, that's getting in and out of. Oh no, actually, so if we have a trait to spare, we can make it so that you gain an edge on emergency disembarking if the vehicle explodes. So that's something that, if we have the room for it, we'll include the tungsten main running light, also wrapped into alertness. Main
Mhm.
water atmosphere feeders, that's just part of how the thing works. And the Shark Series 1 acoustic homing ASW torpedo, we have fixed it so that it is more toy accurate. So yeah, we ultimately only made a couple of tweaks to the presentation. Like if you compared them side to side, you'll only see a couple of numbers different. Um, but it's a much better build, much more accurate, much more usable, much more balanced, and fixes all of my stupid mistakes.
All right. This is the one you're happy with.
I am happy with it. Are you happy with it?
I'm happy with it too. I feel that it really does represent everything that's on the sheet. I feel that it feels more nimble and it feels not like a level 26 threat.
Yeah. Oh, we should actually talk about the movement because I gave it 60-foot aerial, 60-foot water. I might half both of those for a couple of
Really?
reasons. One, so that something like the Skyhawk, which is purely an air vehicle, has air superiority over the Shark. Let me double check. What does the Skyhawk have? Oh, Skyhawk has 90-foot aerial. Oh, okay. Well, then maybe I'm okay. Um,
It does feel like it should go faster in the air than it does underwater.
you think I was thinking the opposite.
It,
It's a flying submarine, not a submersible jet.
fair enough. I was thinking water is more dense than air.
Yes, true. Um, no, I think I will cut the aerial into 30
Mhm.
because like in the air you don't have rough terrain to deal with. There are just fewer things in the air, so in general, an aerial movement is more powerful than all the other movements. Um, so yeah, 30-foot aerial. We'll keep the 60-foot water, and that's
And
the
it is a
final change.
brick, right? Like it
Right.
is not, it does not seem to really have much in the way of surfaces that would allow it to actually fly. Now, we are using magic and, orc logic of we think it works, so it does. But I can see why it would be a
Super
very slow
science.
flyer. Super science, physics, meh, they work differently.
I guess one of the only things we haven't covered is its health. So it has a health of 6, and I like that. So it is less than its threat level. So that generally represents a more vulnerable vehicle when it doesn't have 28 evasion defense. So yeah, so it having a lower health than its threat level does give us the chance to put a couple of extra perks in there because I forget what do we call it in threat creation rules lingo? Give me a second. Oh yeah, there we go. So if the threat, so vehicle or character, if the threat's health is higher than its threat level, it is considered resilient, and usually it'll have fewer perks and powers, just as it being beefier takes up some of its versatility. Typical is when the health and the threat level are equal, and then canny. So this is considered a canny threat, where the health should be threat level times 0.75. Let's just do a little math here. 7 times. So 5.25, and I generally round up when it comes to health. Just it's a low health game, so I feel a little generous there. Charles, we fixed the shark.
Yay! We fixed the shark. And so I'm hoping that, if you've used the shark in the old version, do maybe in the comments, tell us whether you like the new version. Is it something that as a GM you would feel more comfortable using? And I'm trying to imagine what it would be like if this was the shark in the initial adventure rather than the super powered one.
Oh, it would be much, much more logical. It would just, everything about it would be better, Charles. I know you're trying to promote comments, but like, God, that first version of the shark was wrong.
Excellent. Well, if you liked it and are like, oh, why'd they nerf the shark? Comment on that as well. But I think that we've got a better product there. And how can people get a hold of this? Are you going to put a link to it or put it on the blog?
Yeah, I will stat it out in a very no frills version of it. So, like, I apologize, you're not getting the full Renegade treatment of a nicely laid out page with art. This is just going to be bare bones to fix the numbers. I will put it, I will accompany the blog post. So, I'm not going to make its own post. Sorry, not the blog post, the episode post. I'm not going to give it its own post. It'll just be in the show notes. So you'll be able to find it there. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go to the website, nodirectionpodcast.com, find the episode 52, sorry, Upshift episode 52 post, and you will find the shark there. I'll probably also post it to the Renegade Discord in their like house homebrew, in their homebrew section in the G.I. Joe channel, so that again, Renegade doesn't come at me for posting official content in an unlicensed format.
Awesome. All right. Seems like a good reason to jump to the shoutouts.
Yes, I do have a shout out. So people, I believe, know that for a year I was running the Voltron social media account. So specifically Instagram and Facebook. And it's been about 6 months that I did that. So I went from thinking about Voltron deeply every day to like just Voltron being out of my life in any kind of official capacity. And somebody found me on LinkedIn and invited me to come speak on their Discord server about my experiences there. And they recorded it, they released it to YouTube. So if you go to, there will be a link in the show notes. It's Tara J. Mullaney was the one who hosted it. The Voltron Q&A with former social media manager Ryan Costello is the name of the video. I will put the caveat that it's okay. Every fandom has a division of the fandom called the Shippers, where a whole bunch of their fandom is based around putting two characters together. Voltron had two really significant shipping communities. This group was they were Clancers. They were people that believed that Keith and Lads should have gotten together. And so just know that that is only roughly mentioned here and there in the conversation. If that is not your thing, please leave them alone. They are just having a nice little conversation and a nice little community. And if you just don't care, or if it is your thing, check out the video. I honestly had a really good time reminiscing about something that is not so distant in my past, and yet it feels like it was a million years ago for me.
Hmm. So I'm going to make the pitch again. Viewers and listeners, please comment, throw your comments out there. Uh, I need it for my ego. Ryan needs nothing for his ego, but just let me know how we're doing. Also, your comments do lead to how we do the show. Things that you talk about become ideas that we use. So it is your opportunity to influence how Upshift goes.
Yeah, David said he wanted a whole episode based on the G.I. Joe Ranger role. We've never done like role breakdowns, and it would be weird to start with the Ranger when alphabetically it's one of the last ones. But it's the only one that's been requested, and I designed it, so I have a lot of insight into it. So we might just do a whole episode about the Ranger.
Writing that down now. And of course, we want to talk about the headcast and the Energon protocols with Eric Smith. It is our live play broadcast and still maintains being
It
an
is a
enormous
narrow
amount of
cast,
fun.
not a
It's a,
broadcast.
oh, it's a narrow cast. I don't know. I
Broadcast is you
don't.
put it on TV and it just goes out there, and you have to be there at the time. Narrowcast is more on demand. All podcasts
See,
are narrowcasts.
I'm learning so much here. I don't know any of the lingo. This is, it's really a whole world there that you're pulling the curtain behind. Pulling the curtain out? pulling the curtain aside for me?
Back. Pull the curtain back.
Ah, there we go. That's the one I was looking for. See, I didn't know that one either. So,
So thank you for joining us. If you'd like to know more, you can go to nodirectionpodcast.com where you'll find other great gaming podcasts and blogs, including my Essence 20 build blog called Essential Builds. I most recently built Buffy Summers because it's October and I'm doing spooky builds, which may sound like you're getting a whole lot, but you're getting two, because that's just, it's every 2 weeks and there's only so many weeks in the month. So you're getting Buffy now and you'll get Beetlejuice at the end of the month. Oh man, I said it twice. We cannot say it. I said it 1.5 times. Does it count? If you flub how you pronounce it, well, I'm not going to take the risk. That was a build that was requested by Rena from Renegade, and I could not figure out how to do the build. So they've been waiting for a long time for it, but it is finally coming. It will be the one that comes out the week before Halloween. Thank you to our patrons. You can find out more at patreon.com/nodirection. And thank you to Word Burglar for the use of Letter from Snake Eyes Part 4. You can find out more at wordburglar.com. Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
and I'm Charles Cushman.
This has been Upshift.